Okay.
We can see. So anytime you want to begin, you may. This is our first presentation of the last session, SFL in multilingual context. So Natalia, you're going to explain what happens, logical grammatical metaphors in Spanish history textbooks. So you may begin whenever you're ready. Welcome.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Well, so if everything's okay with the presentation, I can start, right?
Right.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well, and thanks for joining me on a Friday afternoon. I'm Natalia Leiva from Chile, and the title of my presentation is Explaining What Happened, Logical Metaphors in Spanish History Textbooks. This work is part of my PhD thesis, guided by Professor Teresa Oteiza. Following the outline, I will start with the problem that led to this study. On the one hand, plenty of SFL studies have shown the essential role logical metaphors play in construing and composing explanations in history. However, it's a very challenging kind of linguistic phenomena for students to understand in secondary school. On the other hand, in Spanish, connections have been extensively studied from the perspective of conjunctions, understood from an SFL perspective as the congruent realizations. But conjunctions between clauses or clause complexes are not the only means of expressing connections. In fact, work from SFL has shown that in history, connections are more commonly construed within the clause. This way of expressing connections is defined as metaphorical realizations or logical metaphor. These metaphorical ways of expressing connection in Spanish are mentioned in papers studying history discourse, but haven't been the focus. These works also haven't explicitly developed their understanding of logical metaphor, as they haven't distinguished units of meaning at discourse semantics and lexicography. Additionally, the theory has evolved. Recent descriptions of field by Doran and Martin and description of ideational discourse semantics by Howe allow a more refined understanding of grammatical metaphor in general, including logic metaphor. So building on these latest descriptions, this study offers a detailed analysis on metaphorical realization of external connection in Spanish, providing a systematic treatment of the relations and tensions between strata. This involves reflecting on the interactions between the system of connection and other discourse semantic systems as, for example, appraisal and periodicity. Let's move on to the main foundations that inform this study. As you all know, SFL has developed as a stratified model of language and context. This view of language underpins the triangular perspective. This study takes discourse semantics as a starting point and considers from above how activities are related in the field, from around how figures are connected in the text and the interactions of these with other systems, and from below how connections are metaphorically realized in Spanish lexicogrammar. So to begin from above, in terms of register variables, the most relevant one for disciplinary knowledge as the one built in history is field. According to the recent description of Doran and Martin, field is a resource for construing phenomena from a static or a dynamic perspective, and adopting a dynamic perspective means focusing on activities, which can be unmomented or momented. To study school history discourse, this study adopts a dynamic perspective on activities. So following Martin and Howe's ideational discourse semantics model, it is possible to map the unmarked relations of units across register, discourse semantics, and lexicogrammar. So unmomented activities are typically realized by figures, and momented activities are typically realized by sequences. In turn, a figure is congruently realized by a clause, as general prices went up, and a sequence by a clause complex, like oil became scarce, so transporting prices rose across the continent and general prices went up. Our focus today is on connection and therefore on sequence, congruently realized by clause complex. However, in SFL model, the stratified content plane allows us to map the grammatical diversification. Thus, a sequence can be realized not only by a clause complex, but also by a clause or a nominal group complex, which creates a straddle tension between discourse semantics and lexicogrammar called logical metaphor. So let's see this in more detail. This table illustrates a congruently realized sequence in Spanish. The original instance in Spanish is up in gray, and the English translation we will follow today is in black below. Each figure, as you can see, is realized by a clause, and the connection is realized by the conjunction. So neoliberalism was implemented in Chile, so many institutions were privatized. And what about the metaphorical realization of connection and sequence? It is key to emphasize that it's not the mere presence of an instance of connective lexis, as this process implicated, for a connection, a metaphorical connection to be identified. To identify a metaphorical realized connection, we need to see it connecting at least two figures onto a sequence, as this table shows. This metaphorical realization, which is considered an agnate to the previous congruent one, realizes a sequence by a clause. For this to happen, the connection needs to be realized either by a noun, by an adjective, by a preposition, or by a verb, as in this case, implicated. And at least one of the figures needs to be realized at group or phrase rank. This canonically occurs by means of a nominalization, as in this example, implementation, privatization. But it can also happen through text reference, this implicated, and embedded clause, implementing neoliberalism implicated. Both nominalizations, text reference, and embedded clauses allow a figure or a series of figures to be packed as a participant and thus contribute to map a sequence within a clause. So they are considered to be experiential metaphors, at least in this environment. Having reviewed the main theoretical understandings to address connections in Spanish, let's see, what exactly did I look at in my study? I analyzed different types of logical metaphors used in an official history textbook in Chile for 11th grade. It is important to say that in Chile, textbooks are commissioned by the Ministry of Education and distributed free of charge for 90% of educational institutions. In this sense, they are an authorized body of language and represent the way governments want students to remember the past. The recent past addressed in the unit I am implementation of neoliberalism during the dictatorship in the 70s. Therefore, looking at the linguistic resources using this text is relevant because they may affect students' understanding of the recent past. Now I will show you a few examples selected as representative of different types of logical metaphors found in the textbook. The data analyzed showed that sequences were metaphorically realized by both clause and nominal group complex. In what follows, we will review realizations from more to less metaphorical involving the following word classes: connection realized as adjective, verb, noun, and preposition. We begin with the analysis of logical metaphor realizing connection through adjective. In this extract of the history textbook of the words of the Chilean dictator Pinochet are quoted. To characterize the 1973 coup, the dictator uses three highly charged experiential metaphors: the overthrow of an illegitimate and failed government, the end of a political institutional regime that is definitely exhausted, and the imperative to build a new regime. The last two of these are connected into a sequence, which is realized by a nominal group complex. The sequence is causal because of the connection being realized through the epithet consequent. Let's see it in more detail with this table. As you can see, each figure is realized by a nominal group involving a nominalization, which is underlined. In nominal group 1, the occurrence is nominalized, the end. This makes it easy to hide human agency, which in this case is especially convenient as the speaker himself was the perpetrator of the violent end of the previous regime. This also explains why he enacts negative appreciation, definitely exhausted. On the other hand, what is nominalized in nominal group 2 is the evaluation of the figure, the imperative underlined, with the occurrence being realized as the qualifier to construct a new one, and the causal connection being realized as the epithet, consequent, in bold. If the figure were not evaluated, its nominalization would be the construction of a new one, right? This logical metaphor can be unpacked into a congruent agnate, which makes the sequence explicit, realizes both figures through clauses and the connection through a causal external conjunction. No nominalizations involved. These two tables illustrate the straddle tension that allows us to recognize logical metaphor. Also, this kind of logical metaphor through nominal group complex allows the speaker to treat a whole sequence
Natalia, you seem to have lost your connection. Oh boy. Natalia?
I think we lost her.
Hello?
Hello, Daniel. Hello, Germán.
Hi, Tere.
Hey.
Hey, hello. Hola, hola.
Hola.
Hello.
Oh.
Well, let's wait and see. I hope she'll be able to come back.
Your voice sounds with echo, Jacqueline.
An echo. I've been doing something here with my volume button. I don't know what I did.
Hmm.
Do you have two devices?
Yes, I have the laptop and the screen. Maybe I'll just switch. Bring everything to one. So how does it sound now? The same? Better?
Same.
Same. What's causing that?
Maybe you have to mute one of the devices.
Turn the other one off. It's off.
Germán, can you contact Natalia? I sent her an email, but I don't have her WhatsApp.
Yes, okay, I will send her a message.
Yeah, I sent her a message, but maybe she's trying to reconnect.
I'm sure she is.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty sad.
Let me see if I got an email from her. She would have my email. I don't know who I am.
Daniel, aprovecho de decirte, me voy a tener que retirar y justo vienes, pero no voy a poder quedarme a escucharte. Nada personal.
No te preocupes. Así andamos con De un lado para otro, ¿no? O de sala de Zoom a otra sala de Zoom. Una para dar clases y otra. Oh,
Exacto.
Natalia is back.
Ahí llegó, bien.
Hi again. I lost my connection, but I recovered it. Okay. So let me see where I was until you heard me. I think I was here, right? Can you see my screen in presentation
Yes.
mode now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's pick it up. We were finishing the revision of this first configuration of logical metaphor with connection realized as adjective, right? And commenting on the fact that the old sequence was composed as new. Let's move on now to consider the most frequent type of logical metaphor in the data, the so-called favorite clause type by Halliday. This sequence is realized by a clause involving connection realized through a verbal group, meant, and two experiential metaphors. In these examples, two economic occurrences are causally related. Let's see it in more detail. Both occurrence figures are realized by nominal groups, and the connection is realized by a relational process, meant. The verbal realization of connection opens resources of the system of appraisal. It gives the writer the possibility to fine-tune causality through specific lexical choices. For example, the process allowed would realize a lower degree of causal force that meant the one chosen in the example. This resonates with the distinction between enabling and determining relations developed by Coffin. In my data, 12 different verbs realizing causal connection were found in logical metaphors. These are aligned along the scale that ranges from more enabling to more determining. So regarding heteroglossic engagement, connections such as allowed expand the dialogic space, while meant contract it. And it is interesting to note that this possibility of tuning up or down causal force is not available in conjunctions. This can be seen precisely in the congruent agnate of our example. In this clause complex, figures are realized by clauses and connection is realized by a causal conjunction. What is expressed through two ranking clauses in the congruent realization is expressed through just one ranking clause in the metaphorical one. These two tables illustrate the straddle tension that allows us to recognize logical metaphor. In the logical metaphor above, the nominalizations and the verbalization of connection allow writers to pack the whole figure, the drop of the price of copper, as cause and compose it as theme of the clause, as well as packing a fall of $25 million as the effect and composing it as the new of the clause. So this contrasts with the textual possibilities in the congruent agnate, in which entities such as copper price or exports tend to be theme of the clause. Let's see this other configuration with connection realized by verb, but this time involving text reference. As seen in the example, one of the figures, the effect, is realized by a nominalization, the import of foreign goods, while its cause is tracked by a relative pronoun. In Spanish, we have gender distinctions in pronouns, so there are feminine, masculine, and neuter ones. Neuter pronouns, as lo que here, typically recover one or more figures. In the example, lo que tracks the two congruently realized cost figures in the cotext before the comma. This is outlined in this table. Below, you can see the unpacked version. And from now on, I will show you the congruent unpacking through clause complex analysis, as in a table, it would be too small to see. You already noticed the straddle tension that is better illustrated with the tables. So as shown in the congruent agnate, the tracked figures by loque, the text reference, are explicit. The connection is realized through a conjunction, and the effect figure is now realized through a clause instead of a nominal group. So we've seen that text reference can play a role in tracking figures in a sequence. This also enables the writer to compose previously displayed figures as theme of the clause in the service of information flow. Now we consider a type of logical metaphor involving sequence realized as a clause with connection realized by noun, in nominal group within circumstance. As outlined in the table, the effect is realized by a clause. The rise in general prices had a strong impact on the continent, which implies a sequence of two figures itself, since one of the participants is an experiential metaphor, the rise in prices. Prices rose. Therefore, it is considered a complex effect. Meanwhile, the circumstance of this clause realizes both the connection and the cause figure of the sequence. The connection is realized nominally by the thing, consequence, while the cause is realized by its qualifier of regional interdependence. The congruent agnate shows the causal connection realized as a conjunction, because, and the cause figure realized as a clause. Regions were dependent on each other. Also, the complex effect involving two figures, the rise in general prices impacted on the continent, is unpacked as two clauses paratactically related through a causal conjunction. General prices went up, so the continent was affected. We finally consider a type of logical metaphor involving a sequence realized as a clause with connection realized by the preposition in the circumstance. In this sequence, the reason why the dictatorship got back on track with neoliberal politics is explained. Here, we do have one figure realized congruently by a clause, as in the previous example. The military regime returned to the neoliberal path, and cause figure, together with the connection, realized a circumstance. The nominal group, the pressure from the economic expert groups, realizes cause figure, while the prepositional phrase, because of, realizes the causal connection. The congruent agnate of this sequence has both figures realized as two different clauses in a clause complex connected by a conjunction. Notice how packaging a figure as la presión de los grupos económicos in Spanish, or the pressure of the economic groups, makes also the argument less arguable. Now we've reviewed the main configurations of logical metaphors in the school history data. Let's return to the scale, which is based on the one presented by Hao in her work on biology discourse in English. These tables orders the realizations I showed you from the less metaphorical to the most metaphorical, depending on the condensation of sequence through clause or nominal group complex, and the condensation of each figure through clause or nominal groups by nominalizations or text reference. This is a panoramic view of the different types of logical metaphors that are used to construct explanations in history in Spanish. So let's turn to conclusions. First, as illustrated in the diagram, this work has offered an explicit conceptualization of the distinctive units of meaning in discourse semantics and lexicogrammar to look at connections in Spanish. So this has enabled us to develop clear criteria for identifying different types of logical metaphors. Second, the analysis revealed that different types of logical metaphor interact with other discourse semantic systems, which involves a number of metafunctionally diverse payoffs. Ideationally, metaphorical realizations of figure, either by nominalizations or text reference, allows us to construe complex phenomena as clause participants, so they can participate in clause grammar and relate to each other in nonlinear ways, often as causes and effects. Textually, the use of logical metaphors open up the resources for composition of these causes and effects as themes or news in the information structure of clauses. This allows writers to reorganize the periodicity of their sentences and text. By this means, writers can adjust the thematic status of specific phenomena and construct predictable chains of reasoning. Interpersonally, the metaphorical realizations of figures expand the options for evaluating, as nominal groups make available extensive resources for enacting attitude, and the metaphorical realization of connections by verbal groups make it possible to regulate causal force and finally grade causality. So as we have seen, logical metaphors in Spanish make an enlarged meaning potential available for writers too. Finally, some projections. As logical metaphors tend to be hard for students to understand, it is strongly suggested to do some explicit scaffolding in history classes. This involves teachers taking time to unpack logical metaphors in a more spoken form that all students can follow, perhaps progressively as illustrated here, step by step, figure by figure, when dealing with students writing, this same exercise can be reversed to help students do the packing. That is, step by step, increasing the metaphoricity of their writing and reflecting on the payoffs that this may involve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalia. Do we have any questions for Natalia? You have clapping. Daniel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Natalia. Very interesting. I want to refer to the table that you showed, where you put enabling and determining processes by Coffin.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was part of your research, but do you consider the types of processes that they realize, like allow, enable, stimulate, favor?
You mean at the lexicogrammar level, the process types?
Yes, if they're relational or material or.
No, I didn't go deep on that point because I stayed like in on that issue. I stayed in the discourse semantics level, so I haven't reflect on the possible correlation between those selections, like at discourse semantics, appraisal, and process type. Do you have any intuitions about that? Maybe relational process make more fine selections?
That's always my first guess when I see these types of constructions, that they are relational, considering that there are three types of relational processes, right? The circumstantial, possessive, and intensive. So I think those could be described as circumstantial because there is a cause and an effect. And that's my other question. When you look at those instances of grammatical metaphor, it's always this type of relationship, cause and consequence, or have you seen other types of relations within the grammatical metaphors, logical metaphors?
Yeah, I think the most exploited type of connection is surely a causal one, no? In metaphorical realizations of sequences. But I've also identified very interesting configurations for additive sequences. In fact, in the paper that I explained all what I talk about today, I also consider some of those configurations which combine causal sequences with additive sequences. So you can combine two causal sequences with an additive connection. And there's like a more complex combination. Yeah, but that's for sure. Additive, mainly additive and causal, I would say, regarding logical metaphors. What I found is that, for example, regarding subtypes of causal meaning, manner is typically realized in Spanish by implicit connections through non-finite gerund clauses. So that's something I also found. Okay. And thank you for your comment about process types. I think it's a very interesting issue to keep on thinking and looking for the correlation or interactions between the selections in the two levels, right?
Right. Well, I look forward to reading your paper. Is it published already?
No. Oh. The one regarding non-finite gerund clauses would be published soon. But this one, I guess, next year. in a Martin and Howell's book on history discourse.
Oh, great. Well, I look forward to reading that paper.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia. There are some comments in the chat that there are ongoing discussions in the other thread at UBC about history genres. So those are pre-recorded, so you should be able to track them down if you would like. So that brings us to our next presentation. Thank you very much. And the next presenter is Daniel, I believe.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So my presentation is about this terminological database for translation, in which we include SFL terms in English and Spanish. Well, first of all, we know that in linguistics, as in other disciplines, we have the need to translate terms. And many times those terms are originally coined in a foreign language, for example, English. And that is the case in systemic functional linguistics. And this task might be especially difficult when researchers work within the framework of theories that are eccentric. And by eccentric, I mean that they use terms in a way that deviates from other conventional perspectives. For example, in SFL, we have a lot of terms that are used differently as compared to other linguistic theories. So we know that SFL is a socio-semiotic theory that treats language as a resource for construing meaning. And one of the main purposes is to describe the relationship between text and context. So when we're trying to do this, to decipher this kind of relationship between context and text, we use a lot of terms. New terms are constantly being coined in English, and non-native speakers of English face this difficulty of searching for equivalents in their native language. It can be for teaching purposes or for researching purposes. If we want to write a paper in Spanish, we need to translate those terms. So that's the purpose of this project. We decided to create a terminological database of SFL terms. It's a wider project that includes not only SFL terms, but other terms from other disciplines as well. This is the name of the platform, ENALTERM. It's a combination of the name of the school, Escuela Nacional de Lenguas Lingüística y Traducción, and the word term in English. So the main purpose of this database, this platform, is the creation of translation-oriented terminological entries that can orient students, teachers, and researchers when they are trying to translate texts. So we have the web page. This is a website where you can actually go and you can do two things. You can consult the terms that are already there, or you can introduce new terms. I'll go back to this platform so we can explore it. But first, let me talk about SFL in Spanish. We know that although there has been widespread dissemination of the theory, the great majority of developments have been in and about English. And when we consider the number of books translated into Spanish written by Halliday, only 2 have been translated into Spanish. And this is in sharp contrast with the linguistics books written by Chomsky. Almost all of those books have been translated into Spanish. We also have a lot of systemic functional grammars of different languages. For example, Spanish, French, Chinese, and Japanese, all of them written in English. And we have a glossary by Mathisen, Teruya, and Lam. This is a glossary of SFL terms that contains definitions in English. Of course, this is a very helpful glossary, especially for those studying or using the theory, but it is restricted in the sense that it does not contain terms from what I call sub-theories, such as appraisal theory or legitimation code theory. If you try to look up one of those terms, they're not there. So there are different, we can say, branches of SFL, including appraisal, LCT, genre-based pedagogy, or multimodality, each of which uses different terms, specific terms. So whenever a Spanish speaker has the need to speak or write about the theory, finding the Spanish equivalents of the English terms is often problematic. Let's take, for example, the term mode and mood, two different terms in English that can be translated as modo in Spanish. So modo can be the translation of both mode and mood. And we know that those are two different things. Mode is one of the components of context, the other being feel and tenor of discourse. And mood is a grammatical system that determines whether a clause is declarative, interrogative, or imperative. So when we say modo in Spanish, for example, in my case, I often use the other part of the term, which is modo del discurso. So not just modo, but modo del discurso, to know or to tell my reader if I'm referring to mode or to mood. So we started to create this database first with appraisal theory and LCT. And later we will include other terms from other branches of SFL, such as genre-based pedagogy and multimodality. Let's talk about appraisal. We know that appraisal theory refers to all subjective meanings that can be classified into three systems: attitude, engagement, and graduation. This we already know. Attitude refers to the expressions of emotion, esteem, sanction, and appreciation. Engagement refers to how writers present themselves and the information to readers. And graduation refers to the amplification or hedging of attitudinal meanings. So this is the system, the three systems: engagement, attitude, and graduation, with their respective choices within those systems. Let's take a look at engagement. We have a lot of options within the system, all of which contain specific terms. For example, contract, expand, disclaim, proclaim, entertain, attribute, etc. If we take a look at how those terms are translated by different authors of Latin America, we see a lot of variation. First of all, in the original terms in English, the grammatical category of the terms is verbs. Contract, expand, disclaim, proclaim, entertain, those are verbs. Now, if we take a look at Navarro's translation, he also uses verbs in Spanish: contraer, expandir, rechazar, proclamar. But Kaplan uses nouns: contracción, expansión, refutación, proclamación. That's one difference. Now, on the other hand, some of the terms in Spanish, the only difference is the grammatical category. So, for example, contraer as verb or contracción as noun. But basically, it's the same root of the word. Whereas in some other cases, they are completely different words, as in disclaim, translated as rechazar by Navarro, refutación as by Kaplan. Or entertain, entretener by Navarro, consideración by Kaplan. So the main goal of this project is the development of a digital platform where, number one, users can create translation-oriented terminological entries that include foreign language terms and their suggested Spanish translations. And number two, where the general public can consult those entries when they want to know how specific terms in English or French are translated into Spanish. So this is the process. We have a user that introduces a new term in the platform. The information included is not only the definition, but also context, source of the definition, both in English and in Spanish. Then this information is reviewed by an expert in linguistics and an expert in the specific discipline of the term. So for example, if we're talking about here terms in linguistics, then one linguist can make the revision or the revision regarding the discipline of linguistics, but also the other information about the term. Then those experts can determine that this information be published in the platform, or if it needs another revision by the user. This is similar to the process, the revision process of an article in a journal, where there is an evaluation, and then they determine if the manuscript can be published or if it needs further revision. So first of all, if a user wishes to create a new entry in the database, he or she has to contact the system administrator by email. And currently, only English and French terms can be included in the database. Then, once the entries are published by the administrator, the general public can consult the database without restrictions. What are the advantages of this database? Well, first of all, it will avoid Spanish-speaking linguists using different Spanish terms that refer to a single concept in English. For example, now let's take an example from LCT. The term code shift can be translated both as cambio de código and variación de código. In the database, the use of the former is suggested as the latter is already used in another theory with another meaning. In sociolinguistics, it refers to interspeaker variation. For that reason, the entry explicitly recommends not using this latter term to refer to code shift. There are other cases where different Spanish terms are already being used in the literature to refer to the same concept in English. For example, let's go back to appraisal. The term endorse is translated either as avalar or respaldo. In those cases, we recommend choosing the one that is more widespread in Spanish literature, which is respaldo. In addition, we advocate the grammatical consistency of the translated terms that belong to the same semantic field. For example, if the term endorse is to be translated as a adverbal nominalization, respaldo, then all the translated terms included in the same system should have the same grammatical class, which is a noun. Another advantage of the database is its double purpose, as I already mentioned, consultation and submission. So within the same platform, users can look up entries that have already been submitted, but also submit brand new entries. And since the platform is open to all users who wish to submit entries, the more users are engaged with the platform, the more entries it will contain. Well, before I conclude, let me show you the platform. So this is the one. And we can look for terms here. it already contains appraisal and LCT terms. The terms from LCT are taken directly from the glossary of Mayton, the one that is published in his second book. I don't remember the name of the book, but the last chapter is the architectural glossary of LCT terms. And regarding appraisal, for now, it only includes the terms within engagement, the engagement system. We need to include also the terms of the attitude system and graduation. But let me show you here. You can look up the term. Let me put here entertain. So here we have entertain. The first view is just partial. If you want to see all the information, you have to click here, read more. So here we have it. We have the term, originate coined in English, area, humanities and arts, discipline, applied linguistics, topic, systemic functional linguistics and appraisal theory. The definition, it says entertain. The definition is presentation of the proposition as grounded in its own contingent individual subjectivity. The authorial voice represents the proposition as but one of a range of possible positions. The source of the definition is Martin and White, 2005. The context of the term, how the term is used in a sentence. For example, approximately entertains the possibility that the actual figure may be slightly more or slightly less than 750,000. Then we have the source of the context. Then we have the equivalent in Spanish, consideración, grammatical category, nominal, geographic information, Mexican Spanish, definition of the term in Spanish, which is the translation of the definition in English, the source, then the context in Spanish, and the source of the context. We also include this part, notes for the translation, that includes non-recommended options, such as entretenimiento, which is the literal translation of entertain. And finally, you can download all the information of the terms. Here you have this button where you can download the information. So conclusion, we recognize the abundance of works produced in English and the lack of material available in other languages such as Spanish. We believe that the implementation of tools such as the ENALTERM database can help encourage Spanish-speaking scholars and students to use existing theories in English for research purposes and communicate their work in Spanish. The database can thus help to promote the use of Spanish in contexts where English is considered the main language of written or oral communication. In this way, theories can be less English-centered and more language plural. So these are my references, and that would be it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Very interesting. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a comment.
Natalia, go ahead.
Yeah, Daniel, thank you very much for doing this. I think it's very, very useful for all Spanish SFL researchers. I include myself, and yeah, I'm very grateful to have this available. I was wondering if are you in contact with other Spanish SFL researchers that are working on glossaries as Karina Avila. I also know
Yeah.
that Beatriz Quiroz has a glossary, or is this a separate initiative?
Well, I have been working with Karina Avila and the whole group of people from SFL in Latin America working with this glossary. Yes, because this is a big project that we have in SFL, and we intend to have the translation of terms from different parts of the theory. For example, transitivity, multimodality. So yes, my idea for the future is to have contact with those people so they can submit their information in this platform. The thing is that so far in this group they're just translating the term, and in order for if they want to work with the platform, they're gonna need more information, not just the translation of the term. They need the definition, the context. But yes, I will try to motivate them to submit their work in this platform.
Yeah, the more unified, the better.
Of course,
For
of
us.
course.
And
Yes.
and if I'm not wrong, your platform not only includes SFL translations, but also other theories?
Yes. Actually, anybody can submit information regarding any type of term from any theory, from any discipline.
Perfect. Yeah.
So yes.
It's very wide. Okay, that's excellent.
Yeah. And for example, we also have a group of researchers interested in terms within music. So you can also find those terms in English and in Spanish, terms from music. And the platform allows you also to include images and sound. So for example, if it's a term that is related to music and you want to include sound, you can upload your audio file. Later, I also want to include figures for example, for LCT terms, because Mayton's glossary include a lot of figures. So they can also be part of the information that you can see in the platform.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? So I'd like to say, Daniel, that I work with translators and translation, and I'm a translator myself. So I think this is an excellent effort to take ownership of SFL, if you like, and also to be able to present your ideas in your first language. This is something that the Linguistic Association of Canada and the US, LACUS, does with French. So for our conference, I happen to be president right now. I've been president for 3 years because of COVID. Usually people are only president for 1 year. But it's something that they're able to do. They're able to submit their paper in French. After their presentation, they can submit their proposal in French and present it in French, either in person or online. So I think this is working towards that for SFL, for all of you that are Spanish speakers. Very good idea. And I also like the process that you've chosen about the submission of the word and then the review by experts. That's something we're doing. My specialty, oddly, is church Russian and church German. So church history, things like that. Some of my colleagues do liturgical terms from Church Slavonic and Russian. So it has to go through a series. We're also going to start a glossary because too many terms have been translated in different ways. So the glossary, though, will be in English for these Russian and Church Slavonic terms, but it will also see a series of experts before it gets into the glossary online. So I appreciate this work. It's a little bit painstaking and involves, I think, cooperation from a number of people. Excellent idea. And maybe Blockus can also have since we're North America and Mexico is in North America, maybe we can also have a Spanish thread. I will bring that up at the next meeting. Our conference is at Hawaii in person at my college, in person this summer. So maybe I can send out a call for proposals soon. We could try bringing up the idea, but I'd actually like to see this presentation for them in English to bring up the idea. So think about whether or not you could send in a proposal for that. And we have hybrid, so you can come in person, which would be great, or you can present from wherever you are. So we encourage hybrid presentations as well. So.
Yes, that would be wonderful to work together, Canada, US, and Mexico. Like right now, there is a reunion between the presidents of Mexico, United States, and Canada. They call themselves the three amigos.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
So we should do something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I get to do the presidential address this year at my own college. So I think Spanish is definitely something that can be put into the presidential address. So I will look into it and try to stay in touch with you, Daniel. Okay. Any other comments? We are just about, we have 3 more minutes, but I don't see any comments coming up.
One more thing, if I'm allowed. We started with LCT because actually Carl Mayton wanted some of his papers to be translated into Spanish. And he's in touch with the people here from Mexico. And originally the project was to publish a book in Spanish with some of the papers by Mayton. And I was in charge of translating the glossary, the architectural glossary. So that's where I got the translations. And then because we already had the wider project of NL term, so we decided to create those translations within the platform.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm in touch with him too, so maybe I could get some connection for him. Okay. Thank you very much. It was very encouraging. I like the idea. And also, I'm one of the reviewers for articles for Profile, the Colombian German educational journal. Not that I don't speak any Spanish, so they just have me as an English editor or reviewer, but it would be interesting to see, maybe they have some of their articles in Spanish, but to see more publishing in Spanish in general, with all the work you're doing. Even today's session, this is session 3, you have all the Spanish speakers. There's no reason really why we couldn't have done it in Spanish. I mean, I didn't have to understand it, but I mean, I'm glad I did, but it could have been presented in Spanish. Thank you. Okay. So we'll welcome our final speaker then. Thank you, Daniel. The final speaker is Dina.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
The pleasure to join you today. Dr. Jacqueline.
Yes, Jacqueline.
Hi. So, can I please share my screen?
Yes, go ahead and do it.
Okay, thank you. Now, please, if you see my screen, say yes.
We can see part of
Yes,
your
you
screen.
see it right now, yeah?
Yeah,
Yes,
but
but it's
Okay.
small.
So,
very small.
okay. Oh, yeah. Well, please, can you just try to maximize your screens, because I have some technical issues for
okay.
my
It's email,
laptop,
so don't
or
worry.
I couldn't,
It's
I
just
couldn't
sideways.
actually yeah, I couldn't fix it. So
Okay.
just take your permission if you can maximize the screen. That would be better for you. Okay, let me go ahead and introduce myself. And this is Dina Abouzi, PhD candidate from Alexandria University. And I'm specialized in translation studies, Alexandria University. So the title of my presentation is about El Mamar. That's an Egyptian film trailer. We want to investigate meaning creation through the mise-en-scène elements and functional interpretations, functional categories interpretations. So I would like to summarize my my research. So film is encounters in its interest to send thoughts and insights. Movie producers actualize different techniques to the intended audience. Components like setting, lighting, space, clothing, and acting, which can be alluded to part in making state of mind. This procedure is of the real world and make an all-out fanciful partner of film. So systemic functional linguistics as cohesion. So as for Bordwell and Thompson, they say that they revive functional approach to filmic meaning. So they introduce 4 functional approaches or categories or types of motivation as an analytical basis of film poetics. So these are compositional, transtextual, realistic, and artistic functions. Due to the time and space limitations of this research paper, we have 5 scenes from El Mamar, the passage. That's the Egyptian film trailer produced in 2019. They are dissected in the light of the mise-en-scène procedure components or functional categories in accordance to Bordwell and Thompson 2003. Notwithstanding their significance to enhance the storyline occasions and their potential consequences for the audience and accomplished improved film watching experience. Now that was a summary of the research paper, and now I would like to introduce the topic extensively. Now the term film is, practically speaking, a specific sort of social antiquity, the yield of a chronicle or on film or in advanced records of a succession of pictures and sounds which tell a narrative, and for the most part somewhere in the range of 1 and 2 hours in term. So subsequently, they are such structures as film trailers, TV, and web ads, and most portions posted on YouTube and other websites. So we presently comprehend that a film's pictures have all the earmarks of being moving and joined by complex and synchronized soundtrack. The entirety of this is recorded carefully, of course. So what might the of a present-day film, ordering and assessing occasions and arrangements, time controls, portrayal and perspective, and world movements. Style in film is a bunch of such choices by methods for determination or composing the situations. At the end of the day, we choose the objects and actors at which we point the camera. At that point, we select the focal point, plan, the lighting, costumes, makeup, stylistic layout, select film stock and stops, shot metrage, point outlining and creation, plan for acknowledge the mise-en-scène, select actors, the optical, printing, impact, sounds, and choose their connections to the pictures and so forth. So what's more, a stylistic examination of film should regard it as an informative atheistic event. So to explain this, films are unpredictable components, yet they address human activities and score natural or pragmatist settings. During the atheistic measurement, anecdotal narrative films are formed by selectivity of interest, helpful for the telling of a story. The consideration of film has proposed an appraisal of the different simultaneous narrative films. So first of all, that the nonverbal methods actualize to pass on. This is regularly conveyed as a grammar of the primary classes each channel or asset makes accessible. So these features that is editorial on some piece of the verbal surface, working with a record of the assortment of sorts of significant correspondence that are facilitated and work in film. A transcription itself plays out a foregrounding of certain highlights and backgrounding of others from the first communicational events. Regardless of the way that the control of film examines, has built up a bunch of shows and a meta language for depicting the verbal and nonverbal activities in a sequence. So it needs to explain how that clear sequence of sorts of shots, kinds of cut and sorts of change, decisions of lighting and field, extra diegetic sound, etc. are functionalized together. So the following graphic framework can be used in a complex examination of film in the feeling of an investigation regarding the film story as a type of planned or created correspondence. So it's fundamental to perceive the significance of shows of understanding sort, intellectual importance making, mental contents in romanticized models. In our handling of all that, we notice throughout reviewing a film. So film talk is in the more extensive local area. Film audits and the press on the web, film rights can open us to these natural contents and plans of interpretation by methods for which we group film characters, circumstances, qualities, tones, and messages inside the film narrative. So as for Bardwell and Thompson, they revived the functional approach to filmic meaning. They introduced 4 functional categories, the compositional, transtextual, realistic, and artistic functions. So this figure shows you the relation between the functional categories and film poetics in the sense that we have the aforementioned functional categories. They are motivating film devices to establish film forms and styles, but at the same time, they are controlled via the genre conventions. So the above figure summarizes the process of how this model of film poetics solves the problem of film's meaning creation. The neo-formalists Bardwell and Thompson pertain that the employment of film devices is motivated by the 4 types of functional purposes to maintain certain forms and styles, which can be viewed as socially approved patterns. So now We move to research objectives. So in Mamar, or the passage, this is a film which was delivered to the Egyptian public audience in 2019. It portrays the difficulties looked by the Egyptian armed forces during the period, both on and off the combat zone. It is only, it's not only a film about wartime tanks and planes, but also it conveys the Battle of Attrition's occasions in 1967, conveying certain viewpoints about the Egyptian culture during that time and what it was experiencing because of the battle also. Consequently, the current research aims at featuring the set of conventions for portraying the nonverbal activities in a succession in Mamar film trailer to perceive how this engaging framework is working through the usage of Birdwell and Thompson components of mise-en-scène. It also addresses questions of how styles of film are constructed by the deployment of devices like the functional categories in a problem-solving manner. So this research attempts to answer 3 questions, like the types of selection and control that the mise-en-scène elements offer in Mamar, and what are the concluding interpretations that they have, and how can the deployment of functional categories construct styles of films in a problem-solving manner in a Mamar film trailer. So about the methodological approach we use in this research, we have the organizing of occasions for the camera is to perceive what is placed into the picture outline. So the mise-en-scène is a group of components that work in connection with other film components to imply details and address character awareness, manners of thinking and feelings. So in this exploration, content investigation is used to analyze 5 scenes from the film trailer to understand the mise-en-scène components like setting, costumes, lighting, and acting in details. So this would assist with clarifying how these components consolidate to give mindset, which means an incentive to the visuals. In addition, this study explores the deployment of functional categories to construct styles of films in a problem-solving manner in the film trailer. So I want to jump right away to the findings and discussion based on the analysis. We have figure 1. It shows you a shot from the film showing President Nasser back to the attrition war, 1967. We want to discuss the idea of setting. Segment setting as a component of mise-en-scène is contextualized in the light of a Mamar film trailer to show space, spot, and the occasions depend on the genuine story of unique missions behind enemy lines. The group is relegated to bomb Israel's transit camp in Sinai, and they become more acquainted with that a few Egyptians war detainees are kept there. So their central goal goes to save 2. The Battle of Attrition was done during Nasser reign, a progression of the Israeli powers and plan for a war. So in Mamar, it begins with an Israeli cabinet meeting where members evaluate the circumstances in Egypt and its neighbor nations prior to the proclaiming war of attrition. Now we want to see another example from the film trailer that shows us costume and makeup. So this part examining outfit and makeup to communicate character, circumstances, state of mind through shading, surface, and development. So costumes assume persuading and casual parts in the film story. So parts of outfit can work as prop colors and makeup appliers, and covers the primary character, an Egyptian armed forces official. This is Commander Noor, performed by the Egyptian actor Ahmed Aiz in a battle against Israeli soldier in 1967. So he is the pioneer who remained faithful to his obligations and tasks through all difficulties. In addition, he is the daring director who can give his life for the soldiers and for everybody else to save the country, and even the frightened who simply needed to endure. And then we have another example, actually two examples in figure 3 and 4. The two female characters, they show us emotions and movements. So figures, feelings, and development capacity communicate considerations and sentiments expressive more than genuine for whatever relevant inspiration. So for example, the woman's activist function cannot be disregarded in the film. It has assigned two female characters, the military official. So for figure 3, it portrays the personality of a military official, significant other, performed by Tunisian actress Hindi Sabri. Her eye-to-eye connection with Commander Noor demonstrates a feeling of blended love. So she has the dread of the obscure and all the new difficulties ahead. She shows him widely inclusive love she has. And all things considered, she is the one that makes it all justified. So despite all the trouble, and he will be there with him during the passionate good and bad times. She encounters during the insane, energizing excursion ahead. Such is reality as a military husband. So in figure 4, we have the Bedouin lady. It shows a comparative romantic story between Muhammad Farag and Asma Abu Yazid. These are two Egyptian actors, where the last goes about the Bedouin, as a Bedouin young lady answerable for the officials' direction through their way in the desert. There were an entire variation case. They added the significant and genuine hints of the sentiment we have failed to remember throughout the long term. So the viewers can presume that the outflow of the two actors is fitting to the characters they are depicting in the film inside the setting of the characters' examples of conduct. Furthermore, their extraordinary articulation is fitting to their passionate makeup. So in figure 5, we want to talk about lighting. So it alludes to the enlightenment by which objects inside the casing can be seen. It features lighter and hazier territories inside the edge to make the general structure of each shot and coordinating our consideration inside the edge. It shapes protest by making features and shadows. As introduced in the film, it conveys messages through activities. So they keep a completely controlled course of lighting grants the director to set the disposition of a specific scene. So backdrop illumination is executed in the two figures to enlighten just the edges of the character when an outline impact is wanted. So the movie director concealed the personality of a specific character in a scene. In addition, his backdrop illumination of the characters make viewers see the shadow of the character's body. So top lighting sparkles from over the character and is used to coordinate the viewer's consideration toward a region over the items in the scene. So in figure 5, the sterling characters are lost in the desert. The director can use top lighting to pressure the destructive impacts of the consuming sun on this vulnerable lost persons. So what is intriguing in figure 5, it conveys the possibility of congruity to battle against the adversary, as officers continues to stroll across the mountains. So we come to the second part in the analysis about the functional categories.
You have 5 minutes, Dina.
Okay. So for the functional categories, the film actually features subject matters and themes, setting, narrative form, characterization, iconography, and filmic techniques. So all these features create a harmonical texture of meaning. So the film is a war show film, which is delivered about the Egyptian culture during the time of the attrition war back in 1967. So the Egyptian public, after the war, they felt the harshness and disdain toward the military. The battle of attrition reduced this position since it demonstrated that the military was resolved to turn around the horrible efficiency of 1967 through modifying and modernizing the military, just as starting fights against the foe. So it brings the viewer into the obscure battles of a little group of warriors by General Ibrahim Rifa'i, and which was driven by General Ibrahim Rifa'i. And we have also the lead star, Ahmed Aiz. The film includes the portion of Egypt's most striking actors like Iyad Nassar, Ahmed Riz, and Ahmed Falaukas, and Hind Sabri. So I want to wrap up my presentation saying that the research skims through all the locations of the film, where a few scenes are disfigured in the light of the means and components as well as the functional categories. So disfiguring and explicit scenes show their significance in the storyline and potential consequences for the audience. So a perception of these components in the film prompts a much enhanced film watching experience and understanding the state of mind and importance of the visuals in the film. So here are my references, and thank you very much for giving me the space to present my topic.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Some of what you were saying was missed a little bit because of connection. But who would like to make a comment on Adina's presentation?
Thank you, Natalia. Well, I try to be brief as much as possible due to the time and space limitations, of course. And I can provide you with my email address if you want to consult my presentation in a later time. That would be okay.
Okay, you could put your email in the chat if you wanted to.
Yeah, definitely.
I think studying films is a pretty interesting area. Why do certain things chosen to be in the film and how it's presented and what effect that has? Pretty interesting area of study. And
yes, definitely, because we are not looking on the linguistic part. I mean, it's translated. The trailer is translated from Arabic into English, and I can provide you also with link through which you can consult the film trailer by yourself and see the subtitles. And the subtitles will lead you to the whole film story. But my major was about the nonverbal items. I mean, we start to work on the lighting, as I said, setting. I did not approach sound that much, but it's there to just add meaning to the whole film experience. It was a nice approach for me just to start working on stylistics. That was a project for my stylistics and translation course in my PhD. So that was a nice attempt for me to just look at the nonverbal modes. I mean, it's something hilarious to work on apart from language itself.
Right, very interesting. The language itself is also some of the subtitles, also something worth looking at, I think, when you want to, or if you want to. But yeah, it's interesting. I saw a film. I've watched many films about World War II produced in the United States. Fairly recently, I watched one produced in Russia, and the way the Germans were portrayed in the Russian film was visually quite different from the way they're portrayed in American films. So it made me a little more conscious of how the nonverbal part is presented. The Germans were so frightening in the Russian film. They just looked frightening, and they seemed bigger, almost larger than life by the way the film was shot, I guess. You know, so it presents a lot of a film presents a lot of things that you wouldn't initially expect. The story was good. I think it was the Dawn is Quiet Here, or something like that. Is the name of the Russian film.
Well, actually, that's an interesting idea. I mean, I can support your idea, saying that we have World War movies and about the diaspora, the Jews back in the World War II. So we can work on the same strands. I mean, we can also work on the nonverbal.
I think we lost your voice.
The same approach, working on a different idea, a different type of films. I mean,
yes, yeah. So very interesting. Any other comments? Okay, so can we thank Dina and all our presenters today? Thank you very, very much. And I'm glad we were all together here on New York, and you're all over the world, talking about systemic functional linguistics and multimodality and all of these many things that we're interested in. And I hope we'll all see each other in person at some linguistics or SFL conference sometime soon. But if not in person, it's been good doing it virtually. So thank you very much for coming, and you're certainly welcome to our Linguistics Association of Canada and the US next summer in Illinois College. LACUS is the abbreviation. I will send out a call for proposals when I have it. Thank you again, everyone, and have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to you soon. See you soon, somewhere.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Danielle, I'll be in touch.